The time is at hand.
From the city of Crackheads, just on the outskirts of Williamson, West Virginia, you're in Dark Places. I'm your Huckleberry, Junebug Fugit. Still kind of thinking about the alien invasion coming up in November. Have you got your tickets yet? I think they're either going to use this to explain the rapture, or maybe just to get people in their FEMA camps. You better come inside this camp here where you'll be safe. Stuff like that. Or maybe they'll figure out a way to tax the alien invasion. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, though. I'm excited.
This is the Wartime Broadcasting Service. This country has been attacked with nuclear weapons. Communications have been severely disrupted, and the number of casualties and the extent of the damage are not yet known. We shall bring you further information as soon as possible. Meanwhile, stay tuned to this wavelength, stay calm, and stay in your own house.
This is Mr. Haunted with your In Dark Places breaking news. Out of Columbia, South Carolina. Workers at a site in South Carolina that once made key parts for nuclear bombs in the U.S. have found a radioactive wasp's nest, but officials said there is no danger to anyone. Of course not. How could radioactive wasps hurt anyone? Employees who routinely check radiation levels at the Savannah River site near Aiken found a wasp's nest on July 3rd on a post near tanks where liquid nuclear waste is stored, according to a report from the U.S. Department of Energy. Thank you, report from the U.S. Department of Energy. The nest had a radiation level 10 times which is allowed by federal regulations. The workers sprayed the nest with insect killer, removed it, and disposed it as radioactive waste. No wasps were found, officials said. I wonder where they are. The report said there is no leak from the waste tanks. Of course not. And the nest was likely radioactive through what it called, quotation marks, on-site legacy radioactive contamination, which sounds like, to me, radioactive leak. The watchdog group Savannah River Site Watch said the report was at best incomplete, since it doesn't detail where the contamination came from, how the wasps might have encountered it, and the possibility there could be another radioactive nest if there is a leak somewhere. This is what Tom Clemens, executive director of the group, wrote. I'm as mad as a hornet that SRS didn't explain where the radioactive waste came from, or if there's some kind of leak from the waste tanks that the public should be aware of, Clemens said. The tank farm is well inside the boundaries of the site, and wasps generally fly just a few hundred yards from their nests, so there's no danger that they are outside the facility, according to a statement. The site was opened in the early 1950s to manufacture the plutonium pits needed to make the core of nuclear bombs during the start of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. Now, the site has shifted towards making fuel for nuclear plants and cleanup. The site generated more than 165 million gallons of liquid nuclear waste, which has, through evaporation, been reduced to about 34 million gallons. Oh, that makes me sleep at night. It's a lot better. According to Savannah River mission completion, there are still 43 of the underground tanks in use, while 8 have been closed. This is Mr. Haunted.
The emergency alert
with your In Dark Places breaking news.
This is a national emergency. All broadcasted cable systems shall transmit this emergency action notification message. Important instructions vital to your safety will follow.
There he is, kids. Jimmy Pitnito, Mr. Haunted. Thank you. Kind of seems like the type of thing that we should probably get vaccinated for. You never know. I might get stung by one of these nuclear wasp guys. Mask up. I got some more ghost stories for you this week. Just like this one. When I was 17 or 18, I met a girl in an AOL chat room that lived in another state. We became pretty good friends, and I found out she was Wiccan. Never knew anyone who was Wiccan before, so I was always asking about it. One day we got on the topic of ghosts, and she said she had two living in her house. One, an elderly lady who stayed to herself, and another one that was a girl about our age who liked trying to play around with my friend. One day she said the younger ghost wanted to meet me, so I said fine, with me not thinking anything about it. That night I was laying in bed with my back to the door when I started hearing footsteps coming from my door. I looked over my shoulder to see who it was, but no one was there. I lay back down and listened as the footsteps walked the length of my bed. I tried talking to see if I would get a response, but I didn't get an answer. After several minutes, the stepping sound stopped. I rolled over a few minutes later to see if I could see anything. I didn't see a thing. After saying thanks for visiting, I closed my eyes to go to sleep. As I was falling asleep, I heard my bed creaking at the foot of my bed. No movement, just sound. I immediately looked, but again, I didn't see anything. The creaking sound slowly moved up my bed. I'd peek ever so often and never see anything. So again, I said, I appreciate the visit, but I'm tired and I want to go to sleep. The next night, I was talking to my friend. She said that the ghost was really mad. So I told her about the previous night. As I was typing it all out, I saw a moth flying around the room. It landed on the monitor, so I picked it up and tossed it outside. After hitting send on my message, my friend said the girl was very upset and had just threw a bug at her monitor. I asked her to describe it, and she perfectly described the moth that I had just tossed out. I hadn't said a word about the moth at the time because it didn't seem relevant to our conversation. When she described it, I told her I had just tossed a moth out that looked just like that, and she agreed that it was really weird. I apologized to the girl for upsetting her, and said I'll try to be more aware if she came back. We remained friends for another year or so after that, but lost contact with each other. I didn't get on AOL as often anymore, and she moved and stopped logging on. This is my most recent, but the other night I was laying in bed and the clock had just hit 3:15 a.m. I had just gone to the bathroom and come back and was almost back to sleep when I heard what sounded like a cup being set on a plate. Like China being hit against China.
China!
And thanks for the correction. And I thought to myself, jokingly, aha, sure would suck if someone were in here with me. And not even 10 seconds later, I felt something grab my ankle and hold on tightly. I hit the switch on my lamp and looked around. Nothing there. No imprint on the blanket, no marks on my skin, no one hiding behind the footboard, and the door to the hallway and closets were shut so no one could escape. It had freaked me out enough to sleep with the lamp on that night. I grew up on an old farm. It was no longer operational, but the point is, we had a lot of land and a lot of old buildings, and a lot of people died on said property. Anyway, I was about 15, and I had a habit of wandering the property and seeing what I could find, since not even my dad had seen every building on the property. I wanted to find one that my dad had never seen. I found myself in the junkyard, basically where everyone who owned the house dumped their scrap, and liked wandering around there and seeing all the old useless crap. On one side of the junkyard was this pretty large sandy knoll, and there was an old wooden door on the knoll. My dad explicitly told me numerous times never move that door, and me, being my stupid teenage self, moved it, thinking my dad or someone had buried a cupboard of alcohol, or maybe a bunker. It was just a regular wooden door in the side of the mound. I shrugged and left, never thinking about it. The next week of my life was really scary. Doors slammed, 3 windows shattered, plates broke, appliances stopped working. My mom got pushed down the stairs. My dog was always on edge. And the nightmares. Night after night, I couldn't sleep because of the nightmares. I was being stalked by a mass of moving darkness that got closer and closer to me every night. On day 5, my dad confronted me after window number 3 broke, and I confessed to having moved the door. It was the angriest I'd ever seen my dad. He was livid, yelled at me about this and that. Told me I had to go put the door back exactly the way it was. I was scared to death, having never seen my dad that angry, and ran as fast as I could back to the junkyard and moved the door perfectly back where it was. The events happening at this house didn't stop instantly, but tapered off over the next few days. My dad finally explained to me that although he didn't know exactly what it was, he just knew there was something evil underneath that knoll, and that he had been told by my great-grandfather to never move that door. After those events, I never went back to the junkyard, and still haven't. You can just feel something angry back there, and I never want to be there alone again. When I was 5, my parents made the ridiculous decision to buy a railway station built in the 1800s to turn into a house. In general, that whole house was, and still is, full of warmth and joy, except for the corridor between the kitchen and the main hallway. I don't know what it is, but something about that dark corridor feels oppressive and spooky. But only when you're on the main staircase and look right toward the kitchen door. It's been 23 years, and I still can't go up those stairs without having the lights on full or staring straight ahead and running up the stairs like a monkey child. Even worse, the only bathroom is on the ground floor, so if you want to pee at night, you have to brave the spooky ghost corridor. When I was growing up, my house's oven clock was broken for about 10 years. It was digital, but it just wouldn't show a time at all. In the summer of 2014, my mom, who had been very sick for a few months, died. It was 6:34 p.m. One day, about a week or two later, I was standing next to the oven watching TV while I was making food, and I noticed this flash of time appear on the oven out of the corner of my eye, and I turned to look to see what it was, and lo and behold, the oven clock was working again, and the time it showed was 6:34 p.m., even though it was around noon. I lived in a confirmed haunted house that's been on the Sci-Fi Channel. Well, that makes it legit. Never mind all the experiences that anyone ever had there or anything. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel, so it's definitely real. Okay, sorry. Kind of drifted there for a minute. Mostly really boring, but slightly off-settling things, like feeling watched while going upstairs, being downstairs at 2 to 3 in the morning to make a snack, and seeing a woman in an old Victorian gown walk by and open a doorway into a parlor, old part of the house. Items in the house moved around, doors opened and closed unexpectedly. She was not a mean ghost. She felt like a comforting spirit when I was depressed, going through a rough time. For a short time period, I was convinced I'd been seeing something supernatural. I'd just gotten out of the shower and was drying myself off when a plastic cup slid across the bathroom counter. The startling thing here was how clear it was. I didn't see it out of the corner of my eye. I'd been looking right at it. It didn't just wobble a bit, it slid a significant distance. I ran through every possible explanation I could think of. There wasn't any wind or draft that could have done it. I was too far away for anything I'd done to move it. Nothing else was in the bathroom. My mind just shorted out. You know that moment in a dream where you wake up and you're like, okay, that's it, I'm waking up now. It hit that point, but I wasn't waking up. The actual explanation was there was a bit of water under the cup, which may have expanded a bit from my nice hot shower warming up the bathroom. Made sense, but I never would have imagined something like that could make a cup slide so far and so purposefully. When I was little, my family used to gather at a great aunt's house for Christmas. All the cousins would be herded onto the staircase for pictures. Our parents used to dress us up in Christmas sweaters and dresses and things like that. We'd linger on the stairs to play, but we never went all the way up because my aunt always turned all the lights off on the second floor and we were scared of the dark. So we would dare each other to go up a couple more steps and a couple more until we'd scream and run all the way back down. I'm not sure if I imagined it or not, but I always thought I saw some humanoid shadow at the end of the hall when I got up to the top. I always thought it was a coat hanging there or something. I told my mom about it when I was older, and she looked kind of uneasy. She told me that house was actually haunted before I was born. There used to be a ghost of a lady that wandered around upstairs. My great aunt always ignored her because she allegedly could tell when a ghost was malevolent, and this one was harmless. Until one night when she went to my cousin's nursery. My cousin was an infant at the time, and the ghost was standing at the edge of the crib just staring at the sleeping child. My aunt asked the ghost politely to go away, and apparently she did. But I always found it unsettling, because what if I did see something upstairs after all? My mom's dad can sense when a ghost is around. Yeah, me too. Freaks people out, don't it? Sorry. Our neighbor recently passed, and we had her apartment in our hands, and we let my mom's dad stay there. Her spirit or ghost was around, and things kept falling off shelves. My mom's dad kept shivering. It was in the middle of summer. People who move into that apartment usually move out within 6 months or 1 year. My boss at the time and I were clearing out old boxes of files from the house the company had moved out of. Big fancy manor house, and the files were in the creepy part of the basement that was unfinished. There was also a sealed over entrance / exit for the Underground Railroad. Anyway, the other half of the basement was finished and converted into 2 offices. One close to the stairs, one at the far end of a really narrow hall. The door to creep half was close to the stairs as well, not quite directly across from the first office. The only piece of furniture remaining down there was an old office chair in that far office. We saw it when we glanced in the room to ensure no file boxes were in there. That was it. Never went back in there, and because of the way we were working, we were always together / inside of each other. And we were definitely the only 2 in the building. Also note, the office half of the basement was carpeted, offices and hallway. So we grabbed some boxes, haul them upstairs, go back down, grab some more boxes. And there, blocking the doorway, is the chair from the far office, the one nowhere near us. It could not have rolled out of that office and down the hall on its own. Neither of us have moved it without the other knowing. No one else was there, and they could not have gotten by us without us noticing. No idea how that chair got there. Freaked us out. We put it back, closed that office, and finished getting the files out in record time. I was in high school, specifically 11th grade. My dad worked as a janitor at our school. It was the night of our homecoming dance. I didn't have a car yet, so when my dad stayed late to clean up afterward, I had to stay too. The dance got done around 11, and it would take several hours to get everything cleaned up. Not a big deal. My brother, 12th grade, was there too, so we just helped to move tables and chairs. We were just about done for the night, probably about 1 in the morning by that point. My dad and my brother were in the cafeteria double-checking everything before we headed out for the night. I waited in the hall. I was taking care of something. I can't remember what exactly. I heard something from down the hall. Glancing down, I saw a small child, male, looked to be about 6, walk toward the library. He was wearing a light, long-sleeve shirt and dark pants. I then watched as he turned, stared at me, and then continued down the hall. I choked on the water I was drinking. My dad came out to see if I was okay. I was still coughing hard enough that I had to sit down before I could catch my breath. By this time, the kid was out of sight. I told my dad what I saw, and he just laughed and told me I was seeing ghosts. To be safe, we went to double-check the doors down the hall. There were 3 ways out of the hallway. From the end we just came from, through the door leading outside, and a door right into the library. Both doors were locked, and no one walked past us into the main part of the school. In fact, the only unlocked door in the entire school was the one leading from the janitor's break room to the loading dock where we were parked. Break room led out immediately into the hall by the cafeteria. No way for anyone to get in or out without us noticing. We never saw that kid before or saw him after. Till today, this haunts me. This happened about 8 years ago. It still gives my friends and I chills whenever we think about it. We were having camp. It was a 3D2N camp in church. I don't know what that stands for. Maybe somebody out there does. On the second night, we were all very exhausted and tired from the sports activities we had, as well as sessions given throughout the day. We went to our room at around 11:30 p.m. to take a good night's sleep. About 2 hours passed by, and one of my close friends and I could not sleep, so we decided to write Thanksgiving letters to our friends, campmates, and fellow camp instructors. When we finished writing them, we had to go out of the room and place them inside the wall of envelopes down the hallway. There were around 12 rooms on that level, and this particular hallway had a room to itself, roughly 10 meters down. On these walls were the envelopes, and we placed them inside as fast as possible. We were terrified. We rushed back into our room and still couldn't fall asleep. Being guys, we talked about guy things and joked around. My friend jokingly said, "Hey man, wouldn't it be funny if we put a flashlight against the window?" There was a huge window right across from where our sleeping bags were. So, being a restless idiot, I did as he asked. At first we weren't scared, as we weren't inside the church. But to our horror, we saw a pair of handprints on the window. We were on the 5th floor. There were no constructions whatsoever. The position of the window was impossible to be reached by any human without a rope from a higher floor, or a ladder from the 1st floor. My friend and I pooped our pants. We woke everybody else up, and we all saw it. It doesn't end there. I mustered up the courage to go down to the window and tried to rub it off. It was on the other side of the window. I then compared the hand size to my palm. I'm around 5'9", and my hands are pretty big. The size of the handprint was almost the size of a toddler. Terrified, I lunged back to the corner where my friends and I resided due to fear. We prayed the whole 5 decades of the Holy Rosary, and the handprint slowly disappeared upon completion of the Rosary. Today, this has become one of our fond memories and made us closer than before. I guess bonding over fear makes a strong friendship. When taking out my trash a few months ago, I thought I saw a roommate reading a book or something in the middle of the backyard. This was around 2 a.m.-ish. It was extremely dark under the porch where I thought I saw him sitting, and it looked like he was using a lighter to light up the pages. I couldn't really make out his face, and the rest of his body was in complete darkness. I thought it was a bit weird for sure. I even waved and quietly said, "Hey," when I came out, and he didn't react. I figured he'd just have music in or something. But I've just sat outside before on my own, and I'm very quiet in pretty much everything I do, especially at night, so I didn't think much of it. Thing is, I saw him through the window on the door that leads out back as I approached. I saw him the entire time I was out there, and I even saw that illuminated face through the window when I closed the door. I decided to glance back for some reason as I was walking away, and the light was out. The face was gone. Still, not anything really strange, in my opinion. I still thought he was just out there reading a book. Turns out he wasn't even home. The only other person in the house was my sister, and she leaves her door open Her room is across from my own, so I saw her sleeping when I came out. I don't think it was a robber because it really just looked like someone sitting down and reading. It was facing me, so if it was a trespasser, I feel like they would have seen me and at least not had remained completely and perfectly still. We've also had a neighbor ask us who the girl is with long blonde hair that they saw standing outside in our backyard when we were away, specifically because there isn't anyone like that in our pretty remote cul-de-sac. We know no one with long blonde hair. I was staying at my cousin's house with my mom in rural Alabama, and I got the room upstairs by myself, a converted attic. No door, just stairs and a room at the top. I woke up in the middle of the night to someone whispering, "Hey! Hey!" from the bottom of the stairs. Sounded like my mom, so I got up to see who it was, and no one was there. The next morning I told my cousin, who said, "Oh yeah, that's Charlotte, like it's no big deal." Come to find out, our house was pretty old and used to be owned by a doctor. He and his wife, named Charlotte, who died in the house during childbirth. I slept downstairs the next night. I was around the age of 9 at home by myself at night while my mom was out attending a class. I was wandering around the house, a big old farmhouse, looking for something to do when I saw an old man walking down a corridor. I thought that someone had broken into the house, so after shouting at him, I gave chase, but he just continued walking down the corridor, totally oblivious to me, and silently disappeared into a room at the end of the corridor, just moments before I was about to catch up to him. I got into that room at the end just 2 seconds before he did. In those moments he had vanished into thin air. Still thinking I had seen an intruder and not a ghost, I checked all the locks and doors, etc. in the house, but the building was tight. But as I retraced my steps back to the corridor, I realized that a lot of things didn't add up, such as the fact that, while opaque, his appearance was oddly faded, like someone had sprinkled dust all over him. His clothes looked unusually dated, like something an upper-class gentleman might have been wearing on a shooting trip between 1920 and 1950. He didn't make a sound going down that squeaky, echoey corridor, and he didn't react at all to me shouting at him, nor giving chase, etc. My mom came home, and I told her about what I'd seen, but she oddly didn't want to talk about it. Years later, after some workmen saw the exact same ghost walking down the corridor, they too initially thought the old man was real and totally freaked out when they realized they had seen a ghost. My mom and later brother both confessed that they too had seen the same corridor ghost. Can't be certain who the ghost was, but in an odd twist, a couple years after I saw the old man ghost, some old black and white photos were discovered during a clean of the farm office, and some of them featured one of the previous owners of the farm, who ran the place up until the 50s, and he was wearing near identical clothing, a tweed hunting suit, to the old man ghost that I saw. In another odd twist, I later remembered that when my brother and I were very little, about 4 and 6, we became convinced that an old man ghost lived under the antique carpet in that corridor, and sometimes the cellar next to it, whose ventilation vents opened up under a step at the beginning of the corridor, and we formed this idea that he was a grumpy old man ghost, which we named Mr. Nobody, because he had no body, who hated children, which we didn't think was very fair. And so we would try to aggravate him by hurling insults at him down the cellar stairs, or under the corridor carpet, before running away. I thought it was just our childish imagination, some bizarre game we had conjured as very little children. But after seeing an actual old man ghost in the corridor, who was then seen by at least 4 other people in separate incidents over the years, I did wonder why on earth we were so convinced of the old man ghost's existence before we even first saw him. I worked for a summer in the gold rush town of Bakerville, British Columbia. I saw all kinds of paranormal events. However, none were scary. It is my firm belief that the park is haunted by the town's multiple generations of residents, choosing to watch over their town instead of moving on. Bit of a backstory. The town of Bakerville was rebuilt in the 1950s before it was turned into a park for visitors. So many of the buildings may look original, but are really copies. Much of the town was still inhabited until the late 1950s as well. I've seen several different ghosts in the park. Many of the staff have seen them as well. The reports are often different from person to person. Everything from tourists hearing men arguing in empty buildings, seeing objects move on their own through cold spots, and even the new modern buildings, glowing orbs, and dozens of reports of being touched by unseen people. Many people have reported to have accidentally talked with apparitions on the street, mistaking them for tour guides in period dress. A young woman in a red dress is seen sometimes on the boardwalk. She's very friendly and will often talk to passers-by before vanishing. None of the other ghosts are as talkative, though. Most just pass by, maybe tip their hat or some other acknowledgement. Each building has a different feeling. Some are very welcoming, while others feel as though you're being watched like a hawk. The oldest buildings have some of the most unsettling events. Handprints appear on the inside of the glass displays after cleaning. People speaking Chinese is common, and apparitions repeatedly show up in photographs. My workplace is haunted. A number of co-workers over the years have had experiences. Nothing too major, but enough to let you know that something is going on. I'm going to tell you about one of mine. We appreciate you. I work night shift and am almost always alone. Sometimes it can be hard to stay awake, and I have to find a way to amuse myself. Reddit and YouTube help immensely. I like to do laps around the office when nothing else is going on. One night I had music going and was dancing around the office. I had a blanket around my shoulders and was pretending to be Darth Vader. I was trying to sing along in his voice. Well, I don't think I would have mentioned that. As I was walking by a desk, I felt the blanket and my collar get tugged fairly hard. Now, sometimes a tech shows up. They might be picking up or dropping off equipment, and I figured someone had just caught me acting like a total fool. I turned around with that hangdog smile you get when you're embarrassed unexpectedly. No one was there. I checked around to see if I had just gotten snagged on something, but there wasn't anything there. I just stood there for a moment, and at the other end of the room, a stack of printer paper fell over. I promptly went back to my area, and that was the last time I ever danced at work. Another quick one happened when I was about 10 or 11. I was walking to school, and it was quite foggy. There was a little black terrier walking a few yards ahead of me. I watched it trot along and thought there was something a little off about it, but I couldn't figure out what. I was almost to the school before I realized the dog wasn't walking on the ground. It was a few inches above it. The dog seemed normal in every other way. He wasn't see-through or pale. I wasn't scared, but it did throw me off a bit for the rest of the day. Lawrence Hotel, downtown Dallas, 10th floor, last door on the right. My buddies came in town and happened to book a room there. Short story. Around 3, the fire alarm went off multiple times. Afterward, we kept hearing a small child cry, specifically a small girl, loud enough that I kept opening the door and it would just stop multiple times. I finally called downstairs to find out, were we the only ones on that floor? Come to find out, a small girl fell out of a window back in the day. She cries to get you to leave, in which I did. A little more research, and murders and a suicide have also happened on that floor. Okay, one more. A few years ago, a few friends and I went to hang out in the graveyard. Stupid thing to do for a bunch of bored 18-year-olds on a weekday night, but what happened next was very real to all of our experiences. We were driving my friend's really old beat-up Subaru through the massive graveyard. We stopped to get out and walk around. We walked down a hill and came across this little pond. There was someone sitting on a rock on the other side of the pond. The figure was all black and we couldn't make out any features other than the fact that it looked like a man who was wearing some old-style top hat. Stupid us waved and shouted, "Hi!" He didn't show any acknowledgement or wave back. The man sat on the rock, still. All of a sudden, he jumped to his feet, started running toward us on the water, and then vanished in thin air about halfway on the pond. My friend and I screamed and ran back to our car. I didn't want to believe what we saw, but we all saw it happen. We got back to the car and tried to start it. It wouldn't start. Frantically trying to get it started, we all started panicking and getting very scared. That's when we heard someone banging on the car from the back. It wasn't a constant bang, but every few seconds or so, we'd hear it. Nobody was outside from what we could see in the dark, but something was making that noise on the car. At this point, I'm having a full-blown panic attack, screaming and crying to get us out. Luckily, my friends seemed a bit less panicky than I was and helped keep me calm. It was obvious that they were all just as freaked out, however, more speechless and pale-faced. We would have left the car in the graveyard and walked the long journey to the exit if it wasn't for the banging on the car. We didn't want to get out and leave. After about a minute, the banging stopped. I'll call my mom to give us a boost, I thought. I'm not entirely sure why none of us thought to call sooner. However, I don't believe anyone thinks rationally while panicking. At this point, 15 minutes had gone by since we got back in our car. I opened my phone and started dialing and realized it had no service. None of us had any cell service. Were you in West Virginia? Because it's hard to get cell service here. We bantered back and forth for a few more minutes, trying to figure out what to do, and we decided against leaving the car because whatever was outside was not what we wanted to come face to face with. The next 30 minutes were spent trying to get our car started. No banging was heard afterward, but we felt this very heavy feeling around us, almost as if it created this pressure on our chest. It's quite difficult to explain, as I've never felt anything like it before. Finally, her car started, and she hit the pedal to the metal. We sped out of the graveyard so fast, immediately crossing the gates. All of our phones regained cell service. I'll never be able to explain what caused any of this or why certain things happened. One thing I know for certain is that someone or something was out there, and it was not an animal or a human. So that's about all of the show this week. I hope you enjoyed those spooky stories. Thanks as always, Jimmy Haunted. Thanks to all the crew at Nighthawk Radio. And thank you for listening. If you got a true scary story and you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a story read, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. We'll see you again right here next week. God bless.